supposed to be recording. Okay, I just remembered I was supposed to do that for horticulture. Okay. All right. So, and then you would just combine like terms, x cubed minus 5x squared plus 10x minus 8. So if you have two terms and two terms, you have a couple of different methods that you can use that will work almost identically. But if you have two terms and three terms, or four terms and five terms, or 10 terms and 10 terms, you got to go this route. You're not going to have 10 terms and 10 terms. Don't be worried. You have to go the distributive property route. Otherwise, you have a choice. So let's do this one, and then we'll do full. All right, so before I do this one, go ahead and work through 5n minus 9, 3n minus 4. Go ahead and multiply those and try to do that using the distributive property twice. Let me let you think through it before I take over. Y'all trouble to get up and come to school in this rain. All right. Let me see if that's showing the board a little better. You ready? All right, so go ahead. Who wants to tell me what they got? Where should be is wrong?
15 squared minus 47 and minus 36.
Not minus 36. You see it though? Yeah. Not a huge deal, but a little deal. Okay. All right, so you have, just in case you're had trouble, 5n is going through 3n minus 4. And then negative 9, make sure you take the negative with the 9, 3n minus 4. So that's going to be 15n squared minus 20n. This is going to be negative 27n. I'm just lining up my like terms, plus 36. So add and keep the sign. And there's no other like terms, so you're done. Okay. All right, so that's one choice. Here's the other choice if you've just got two terms and two terms, and that is FOIL. All right, right here, full. And full just tells you the order in which to multiply them, so you can do them in your head. You can do the same thing with distributive property and do multiply those in your head. I'm not saying you have to write it on paper or not write it on paper. This just tells you the order. You multiply the first terms. Let me do this. These would be the first terms at the beginning of the parentheses. A 2 at the beginning. That makes sense, right? Then you would do the outside terms. Multiply those. So these would be the ones on the outside. The outside edges of the parentheses, as far out as you could go. I think you know what's coming next. So those are as far inside as you can go. And then your last terms at the last of each parentheses. So that's the order in which you multiply.
And we're doing sad then, the entire section.
This is quadratics and quadratics. All right, I'm gonna show you what we do. No worries. Sub map is just if you're working with X in the first file.
I'm gonna have to do a quadratic formula problems.
But not today. Tuesday. We'll save them for Tuesday. We're just, today, we're gonna put them together and take them apart, but we are not gonna use quadratic formula next week.
Like 2 things.
And quadratic formula is not hard, it's just long.
Which is why I don't.
It's not my favorite either. And there's about 4 different ways that you can solve it with only one of them being quadratic formula. So it's never my go-to. It's never my go-to. It is a lot of people's go-to though. All right, are y'all ready to do full? All right, so this is just us doing them basically in our head, but I'm gonna write them down at first just because you may be good at full, you may already know it, you may not be. So I'm just gonna start it kind of over. All right, so here's my first. So I'm gonna say X times X. What is X times X? X squared. X plus X, 2X. X times X, X squared. That's easy to get confused. So let me just kind of write that down. X plus X is 2X. X times X equals X squared. That's good information right there because easy mistakes to be made. All right, let me go back to my blue pen. All right, so we did first. The next thing we want to do is, let's go back, is outside. So there's your outside numbers. Make sure you take the negative with a 5. So now let's do X times -5. What does that give me? Yep, -5X, shocker. Now the inside numbers, which would be the 2 closest together. So what is +2 times X? You got it. And then we have last, which are at the end of the parentheses. Make sure you take the sign with it. So we're saying 2 times -5. Combine those like terms if you have some, and you ended up with a trinomial with an exponent of X squared being the highest exponent. All right, you want to go ahead and try this one? I mean, it's okay if it doesn't go well, but just give it a go. Try thinking through first, outer, inner, last, and multiply them. All right, let me come behind you. So 24a squared plus 27A plus 32A plus 36. Look for like terms. Often those middle terms are like terms, but not 100% of the time. And there is your trinomial, with the highest term having an x squared. So you get the same answer whether you use distributive property or full. So it really doesn't matter. You're going to notice in my math lab that on some of the problems, it's going to say use full to multiply this. If you use distributive property, because it works out the exact same, it will never know. So just know one of the methods. It doesn't matter which one you like. Use whichever one your brain says, that's the one for me. Use that one.
But aren't they just doing the same thing?
Exactly.
It's just looking at it,
Exactly.
because you're still multiplying everything by everything else.
That's exactly right. And that's why the computer can't dictate which method you think through, because it can't tell. It's doing the same thing. All right. So do these last two before we turn it around, and then we'll add to that. I'm going to come behind you. Say it again. I did full. Full works as long as it's 2 and 2, but watch. First, outside. Oops. What would be what? Inner. So first, last, outside, inside, outside, inside. All right, so what happens on number 2 if they look exactly the same except the signs are opposite in the middle? What happens?
Like the middle number can,
All right, the middle terms cancel out. So if you recognize it when they're exactly the same, but they have opposite signs, you can skip what? Outer and inner. If you recognize it, you can skip. It's no big deal if you don't. It takes seconds more of your life. So x squared, outer, inner, and last. And then those canceled, and you end up with x squared minus 25. Outside, inside terms cancel. Okay. All right. So what our goal today is, that was part of it. But mostly our goal is still solving equations because that's what we've been doing for the most part since we sit 6-2. 6-1, we were combining like terms and doing a little vocabulary. 6-2, we started solving. 6-3, we solved with word problems. 6-4, we solved with inequalities. But all those were x to the first power. So today we're going to see how do you solve it when your variable is to the second power. Well, here's one thing. If it's to the first power, you're solving for one number. If it's to the second power, we're going to be solving for two numbers. Guess how many numbers we would get if it was to the third power? 3 answers. So we're not doing that. We're just going to 2 today. But we are going to get 2 answers anytime it's a quadratic. So when you see that highest exponent of 2, that lets you know how many answers you're going to have. So the way that you solve a quadratic, one of the ways, is you can turn it into factors like this. So what we're going to be doing is starting with this or this, and we're going to turn it into these factors. Now, let me flip back up here for just a minute. Take a look at number 1. Look at it before we multiply. If I were solving this, which we're going to do shortly, but not yet, the answers would be x equals -2, x equals 5. What did I do? Not to each other.
We subtracted.
But you're
X on the
thinking.
other side of the-
Right.
Or not X.
Yeah, what I was trying to get you to say, you're right. But what I was trying to get you to say is I just changed the sign. X equals -2, x equals 5. If I were solving this one, my 2 answers would be a equals -4/3 and a equals -9/8. See where you see those numbers? It's okay if you don't, I'm going to show you in a minute. I'm just seeing if you can figure out the pattern. So -4/3, -9/8. Let's go down. This one's going to be, anybody know? +5/4 would be a solution. What's the other solution? -9. What are my solutions here? 5 and -5. Okay, I'll show you how to do it. That's how you do it in your head. You're not always trying to teach you how to be lazy. Okay, so we can do it on paper. So to be able to solve those, I've got to turn it into the parentheses. And so that's where factoring comes in. So we're going to work on factoring. So there's a couple of different kinds of factoring where there's trinomials. So you could have I don't know, let me just make up some numbers and not worry about if it's going to work or not. Okay, so what you have are 2 different possibilities. This one is the shortcut that I'm about to show you. And this one is the shortcut with divide and slide. So there's 2 types. What separates them into the, bless you, what separates them into the 2 types? No number in front of the x squared, which means it's just a 1, and a number in front of the x squared that's not 1. That's what splits it into the 2 types. So today, the first thing that we're going to do is work on this shortcut method. Once we feel solid about the shortcut method, then I will take you to the shortcut method with divide and slide, and we'll solve that way. Okay. All right. Yeah, can I move it up or not yet? Not yet. All right, so what we're gonna do is, first of all, let me just point out, standard form is if your exponents go to one, none, you know, descending exponent as you go from that standard form. So we're gonna be working from standard form. When you see a trinomial, which just means three terms, we've got three terms there. What we're gonna do is the product sum shortcut. So this number on the end is the product number, and this number in the middle is your sum number. Always, that never changes. So the way that you want to start is you want to take that product number, and you can either think about it. I'm going to put it over to the side every time. You might want to put it to the side. It can be in your head or on your paper. It doesn't matter. What numbers can you multiply together to get 3? The list is short. 1 and 3. Those are the only numbers that you can multiply together to get 1 and 3. So we don't have many choices on this one. All right, can I add or subtract to get this middle term with 1 and 3? Yes. All right, so it's going to work. So this is what you're checking. 1 times 3 is 3, but 1 plus 3 is 4. So that gets me both of these numbers. So that means you are ready to put it in parentheses. So it's x squared. So I'm going to split the x. I said 1 and 3 are going to work, both positive. So that's what it looks like factored. Now let me just show you that it works. What's x times x? X squared. Now let's do outer. 3x plus 1x gives me 4x. And let's do last. 1 times 3 is it equal? It's equal. So what would my solutions be? -1, -3. All right, so if they ask you to factor, this is your answer. If they ask you to solve, this is what you're doing. So factored, solved. And they will ask you sometimes just a factor and sometimes a solve. So make sure you read your directions so you don't get ill at them.
On the quiz, you can put -x1 comma or -1 comma -3.
Yes. So yes, it's going to say put them in with a comma in the blank. So you would just say -1 comma -3. Yes, it's good we practice it that way. All right, let's do the next one. So we're starting with a 12. What numbers multiply together to give you 12? All right, so look at your pairs. Which one of those pairs can we add or subtract and get a 7? 3 and 4. So that's the winner. All right, now what kind of 7 do we want? We want a -7. So that means that the signs would have to be -3 and -4. You can determine the signs once you pick out the pair. All right, so now we got to check it. Do I need to wait a second? So -3 times -4 equals what? +12. -3 plus -4 equals -7. So I've got this number and this number. So I'm ready for my parentheses. Split that m squared. And then I want -3, -4. No, you mean n-4 and n-3? Because multiplication is commutative. You can turn it around. Okay. All right. So what if they said, those are the factors, that's factored, but what if they say solve? Flip the sign. I'll go to that in a minute, but right now it's kind of new. So m equals 3 and 4. So again, what's the key to know to do it this way? How do you know when you're supposed to factor instead of using SADMAP? X squared. SADMAP is just going to be X to the first power. But when you have an X squared pop up, then it's this. Okay. Because now we're working from X to the first power is called linear, makes a line. If you graph it, X squared makes a U, that parabola. All right, let's do it again. So take the 35. It's always the constant that you take. All right, and now let's try to start narrowing it down. What are factors of 35 that we could use to give us 36? Exactly. So see, you don't have to make the list. The only time you have to make the list is if it's not popping in your head, and sometimes it doesn't, and you have to make the list. Sometimes it's good to make the list because there's more than one. All right, so we want a positive 36. So that means both of these should be positive. And so you say 1 times 35 is 35. 1 plus 35 is 36. Check, check. We're ready for parentheses. So what is my factored answer? Perfect. So that would be factored. What if they say solve? Okay. All righty. All right. You want to give this one a go? If you, and you may sometimes have to pull out your calculator to find factors. Every once in a while, my lab is cruel and throws out a number bigger than they should. I didn't pick any of those numbers. I tried to keep them manageable. That's one of the factors, but that won't give us 13. So keep looking. 6 and 7. Yeah, that won't work. There. All right, so you said the factors are 6 and 7. What kind of 13 do we want? So that makes it so we need -6 and -7. So we check it out. That gives us a positive 42. That gives us the -13. So once we check that out and know that both of them work, then we're ready for our parentheses. So what goes in our parentheses? So what if we wanted to solve? What does A equal? Okay. All right, now before we move on, let me just point this out. Let's see if I can point it out. It looks so messy. Highlight these so you can see them. I want you to notice something on these. Every single one of these, the last number, the constant, is positive. If the last constant is positive, you're going to end up with the same sign every time. Okay, so the sign depended on whether these were positive or these were negative. So when are they going to have different signs? It's going to be when that last number is negative. So let me show you some of those. All right, so let's go through and do factors of 12. Don't worry about the negative. We'll fix that in a minute. So that's 12 and 1, 6 and 2, 3 and 4. Which pair of numbers could I get a 4 from? See that? So that one's going to give me an 11 or a 13. That one's going to give me an 8 or a 4. That one's going to give me a 7 or a 1, depending on if I add or subtract. Okay, so yes, 6 and 2. Now I want a positive 4. Now you'll remember when you're subtracting, you've got that whole king of the hill where it takes on the sign of the highest number. So I want a positive 4. So which one of these has to be positive? Yeah. So positive and negative. So we try it out. 6 times negative 2, 6 plus negative 2, and it checks. I get my negative 12, I get my positive 4, so I'm ready for my parentheses. So x plus 6, x minus 2. So the signs matter very much. So factored. All right, so that's if they ask for it to be factored. Those are the factors. What are the solved answers? Negative 6, positive 2, which is what you meant. Okay. All right, now this one is a little bit tricky. I think that's the one. So let me put a big asterisk on that one. And these tricky ones do pop up from time to time, but the problem is you have multiple factors of 24 that will give you a 10. So you have to be careful because there's only one right answer, but it looks like there might be 2 at the beginning. So let's just do it. All right, so factors of 24 that might give us 10. 6 and I can get a 10 out of both of those, right? I can add those to get a 10. I can subtract those to get a 10. So this is where your signs are what makes the determination. So I want a positive 10, right? If I want a positive 10, then both of these 6 and 4 both have to be positive, right? So that would give me positive 10. If I want 10 out of this, then I need the 12 to be positive and the 2 negative. You with me on that? All right, both of those give me 10. What is 6 times 4? 24. What's negative 2 times 12? Negative 24. Do I want a positive 24 or a negative 24? So that's how you decide which one to use. So positive 24, negative 24. I want a negative, so that lets me know that this is the one I want. Does that make sense? So that one is tricky just because it looks like, I mean, if 6 and 4 pop into your head first and you don't check your signs, you're just gonna go full steam ahead. All right, so let's do the factored. And then let's do the solved. All right, and then you do that last one. See how it's going. do factored and solved, just like we've been doing. Have you got it? What were your factors of 32 that you used? 2 and 16. Sometimes that's the slowest part, is trying to find the factors. The bigger the numbers get, the longer it takes. And sometimes that can be a pain. All right, if I want a negative 14, what signs do they need to have? Remember, they need to be opposite if you're going to subtract. So since we want a negative, our biggest number, it's got to be king of the hill. All right, so if I'm solving it, what are my answers? All right, how you feel about that? All right, it's your turn. All right, so these are mixed up. Sometimes it's got the positive on the end, sometimes it's got the negative. So I just want you to try your hand at it, and I'm gonna come around and help if you get stuck. But before we get going, let me just remind you, what number is this? That is -1. If you need to put a 1 on that, put a 1 on that, but that's not a non-number. Remember, that is -1. So we're trying to get a middle term of -1. All right, y'all go ahead and get rolling, and I will put my mask on and come around and help you if you're stuck. So if you need help, just stop me.
I said through the whole job.
Oh,
If I was learning everything. So I said this way.
It's really not bad. So just. It looks like it's going well. It's good to see you. Yes, but watch yourself. When you subtract these two, it can take some of the bigger numbers. That one's going to be a negative. And you want positive. Did you see it there? Okay. You know what you're doing? Just watch those signs. That's the biggest deal. Yes.
You go ahead and do both the factoring and the solve, so we can just practice for both at one time.
That's, I tried to do.
Okay. That's fine, that's fine. That's my problem. So you have something like this. Okay, so then you would do it again. Okay, so then two. Just like this. So that's what it gives it to us. All right. Well, this is right, and these factors are right. This is what they're gonna ask for. Yeah, it looks good. Okay. What's looking good? I always want to keep from adding to it before I'm feeling solid about that.
Excellent. Okay. All right, so let me just go through it real quick. I know y'all are ready, but just let me go through for my video and get it done. All right, so factors of 12 that will give me 8. Y'all said 6 and 2, but I don't want a positive 8. I want a negative 8. So let's check. -6 times -2. -6 plus -2. Yes. So that means t minus 6, t minus 2 if we want it factored. If we want it solved. Yes. All right. And sometimes this one gives people trouble. And that's why I wanted to remind you that it was a 1 there. So you said factors of 12. They give you a 1 or 4 and 3. Well, I want the 1 to be negative. So my higher number needs to have that negative since we're subtracting. So we check it. There's my -12. And there's my -1. So multiplying gives me the -12, adding and subtracting gives me the -1. It works. We split it. Here is the factored answer. Here is the solved answer. All right, factors of -15, that gives me 2. Y'all said 5 and 3. All right, I want to subtract those because I need to get a 2. So that means my highest number needs to carry the positive sign. So that's a plus and that's a minus. Integer rules are a big deal. So +5 times -3. +5 plus -3. So I'm good. Z plus 5, Z minus 3 if it's factored, if it's solved, -5 and 3. Okay, all right, I'm just going to do this one. So that would be y minus, what do you say, 6 and 3, both negative. All righty. So now, when we get to this next part and it tells you about solving it, we're just going to put an X through it because guess what? We have already done that. We did it on that top part. The only thing that I want to tell you on this is there's a homework problem. I think possibly a quiz me, but I think it's a homework problem where they factor it for you and they just say, what are the answers? So if they factor it for you, you're just, well, here, we'll just say the answers real quick. You're just going to say the answers are 7 and -2. What are the answers on this one? Can you do this on your head? -5, +1/2. If you can't do it in your head, that's no problem. Just set each one equal to 0 and solve it. Let's just do this one in our head. All right. Take a minute and just do both of those in your head, but don't say them out loud so everybody can think about it. We just won't do any work on these. All right, so what do you think? 3x minus 7, what's that going to be, the solution? 7/3. Adam's got it. Y'all, anybody else have a pattern? What's this one? -5/2. Good. All right, and then the last one's easier. What's the solutions for the last one? Beautiful. All right, so we have practiced this. So we're going to leave this alone for right now. So we're going to skip this for today, and we'll use this next week when we review it because we've practiced. All right, so now I want to take you to our last thing today, which is slide and divide. Shortcut with slide and divide. And that's going to be where we stop today. So know this, there is more in 6-5 than what we're doing today because it also contains the quadratic formula which we're doing next week, but it's not due this weekend, so we're okay. So if you're working ahead, and I know some of you are, just know that there's some stuff that we haven't done. We will get to it. Just be patient with me. All right, so let's get to slide and divide. So let me remind you, x squared plus 2x plus 5 versus 2x squared plus 3x minus 6. All right. It's all about that first term. This is your shortcut method that we just did. This is the shortcut method with slide and divide. Divide and slide. I said that backwards. Now, you've probably in high school factored stuff with a leading coefficient a different way. You've probably done it a different way. And if you've got a way to do it, like I learned to guess and check, where you kind of do reverse full and you figure it out in your head and then you do full to make sure it works. And your brain does get pretty quick at that after a while. And then there's like grouping or master product, or I think there's like a rainbow method and a flake method. There's all kinds of different ways to do this. I teach divide and slide because it uses the shortcut, and I think it is the easiest thing out there. So that's my choice, okay? But if you already know how to do it, that's good. All right, so you ready? All right, when you're doing this method to factor or solve, you've got a leading coefficient. So every one of these that we did with a shortcut, they did not have anything in front of the x squared, t squared, m squared. It was just a 1 every single time. So now that it's got a number in front of it, we want to move that number. So we're going to take this 3 and we're going to move it down here with a 15. So my very first step is going to be 3 times 15, negative 15, but I'm going to rewrite it. So I'm going to say x squared minus 4x minus 45. I just did 3 times 15, moved it over here. Why am I doing that? So I can use the shortcut. Oh, Monday, no, not Monday. We don't see each other on Monday. On Tuesday, I will have you a sheet with the steps on it, but I kind of want you to see how to do it before then. All right, so now we're going to do the shortcut method. Second shortcut. So I'm going to say 45. What are factors of 45 that will add or subtract to give us a 4, 9, and 5? Adam, you're firing so quickly, nobody else can think.
I'll stop.
Stop. Fire slower, or just pause. Okay, so that's going to give us 45, but we got to deal with our signs. Now we're subtracting, so that means 1 positive and 1 negative when we're subtracting. So which one needs to be negative? The king of the hill, right? 9. All right, so I'm going to say negative 9 times 5 is negative 45. Negative 9 plus 5 is negative 4. That's just me checking. All right, it works out. So I'm going to say x minus 9, x plus 5. But that's not my answer, not my final answer. I'm close though. So far, the only thing that we really did different is we multiplied the 3 times the 15 and moved it. Okay. All right, but now we're getting ready to put it back in. Okay. So we've done the shortcut, but notice this. If I say x times x, I don't get 3x squared. So this couldn't be the answer, because if it's the answer when I fold it, it goes back to what I started with. So this is where divide and slide comes in. So we go get our leading coefficient, which in this case was 3. And now we're going to bring it down here and we're going to divide. Just the numbers. Don't worry about the variables. No, we don't want decimals. That's why we're gonna have the slide, okay? So if it will reduce, you reduce it. If it will divide, you're gonna divide it. And if it doesn't do anything, we're gonna slide it. Okay, so let me change colors. All right, this divides evenly. 9 divided by 3 is just 3. So this first one, just divide. This one, it won't divide and it won't reduce. So that's where you slide. So when it stays in its own parenthesis when it slides, these are separate. So when you slide it, it's gonna just slide in front of its very own X. If it were over here, it would slide in front of this X. But you have to do that after you divide or reduce. Oops, just kidding. That's factored. Now look, x times 3x, 3x squared. Negative 3 times 5, negative 15. 5x and negative 9x, negative 4x. It would be the same if we multiplied it back together.
So you only have to do that if they wanted it factored and not solved.
Right, only if they wanted it factored and not solved. All right, so yeah, let me write factored. Because they're gonna do both. They're gonna ask you to do both to make sure you understand factored, still in parentheses, solved, actually solved. All right, so if you solve it, what are my answers?
Positive 3 and
Yes, and that's just a scratch mark. I'm erasing. Hold on, solved. So do make sure you read your directions. So the only thing that I've had anybody tell me on this section, I mean, sometimes you get stuck on slide and divide and have to see it a second time, but I mean, more times. But the only thing that I routinely hear is I put in solutions when it asks me for factored or vice versa, and you missed it, not because you didn't know what you were doing, but probably because you just didn't see which one you were supposed to be entering in the blank. All right, let's do this one. Let's do it again so you can see it again. All right, how many of you have ever seen that before? Have some of you seen divide and slide before? You have? Oh, okay. I was gonna say, it's becoming a little bit more prevalent now. I sure do like it more than the way I learned it. All right, so let's see what you remember, because we've only done it the whole once. How do you start it? Once you notice that it's x squared, so that's not sad math, we got a factor, and there's a leading coefficient. You got it. So just because they both ended up being 45 doesn't mean everything always will. I don't know. It's just as luck would have it, they ended up being 45. Okay. All right. And now we're doing our little shortcut. I'll let you work just a little ahead of me. So I will promise you this, I will keep the linear and the quadratics in separate sections on your test, okay? So you'll have the x's and then you'll have the x squared. We'll keep it separate. On the same test, both separate. All right, so what are factors of 45 that will give us 12? Still working on that? $15 and $3 was a good pulse. You did that perfectly. All right, so 15 and 3, that will give us 45 and 12, but now we have to subtract. If we're subtracting, that means one has to be positive, one has to be negative. So we want king of the hill to be negative. All right, so you're going for your parentheses, and then it's time for the divide and slide. So what are we dividing by this time? 9. 9 is the leading coefficient. So you go get the leading coefficient and that's what you're bringing down. This is the different part. Well, aside from step 1. So that 9 is going to be going into 15 and it's going to be going into 3. It just goes under your constants. Now, neither of those divide, right? But it will reduce. If you don't reduce it, you'll get the wrong answer. So we've got to reduce. All right, so let's rewrite those with it reduced. What does 15/9 reduce to? Because 3 goes into both of those, right? Yeah, 5/3. All right, and then how about 3/9? What does that reduce to be? And it's okay that they don't divide out because we've got the slide. That just means we're sliding in each parentheses we're sliding. So that's not a big deal. All right, so when we slide, this 3 goes in front of its own x. This 3 goes in front of its own x. They slide within their parentheses. So my factored answer is 3x minus 5, 3x plus 1. And if I fold that, I would go right back to what I started with. So that is factored. It's my favorite way because it's really, really quick. I mean, right now you're learning it, so it might not feel quick, but once you've got it, it is really, really quick. And my lab does not teach it this way. They're going to use some other method, but I just wanted you to see it. All right, so what if it said solve it? If we're solving it, what would my answers be? It's factored. (5/3), (1/3). And notice that you can just go right back up to this step right here and get it easily. All right. Do you want to try one of those before you go? You see if you can get it done without me? Let's skip this. And let's try. I always want to say it backwards. Divide and slide. All right, hold on. How about make sure the sign is right. All right, try that one. See what you think. See if it's starting to stick. Have you had a chance to think through it? You want me to come behind you more? Okay. All right, let's see how it went. So step one. We notice this is not a 1. If there's just a 1 with the x squared, it's just an x squared, we go straight for shortcut and don't worry about this. If there's a number there, that's the only time that we're going to worry about doing this. So 3 times -5, so x squared minus 2x minus 15. Now it looks like the shortcut. So we're saying, okay, what are factors of 15 that will add or subtract to give us a 2? So 3 and 5 are going to be those factors. I'm going to have to subtract. So when I subtract, the signs have to be opposite. So I look for king of the hill. King of the hill's got to be negative in this case. 3 times -5 is -15. 3 plus -5, -2. So I've checked it. So now I'm going x plus 3, x minus 5. But this isn't shortcut exclusively, it's divide and slide because of the leading coefficient. So this is where the divide and slide comes in. I take that leading coefficient and put it back in. Divide if you can divide, reduce if you can reduce. Otherwise it won't work. But when it does work, you don't have anything to slide. When it doesn't divide out evenly, that's when the slide comes in. It stays in its own parentheses and just slides in front of its own x. And that is factored. Love it.
On the answer to that, if it wanted to simplify or whatever.
Solve.
Solve, would it be 3/3 or would it be 1?
It would be -1, but yeah. Because you want it in the simplified version. Because it always wants you to simplify as much as you can. Good question. All right. All right, y'all have a fantastic weekend. I'm going to make a video on that problem because Corbin in another class also asked me about it. So I know that y'all two are not the only one. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to make a little video talking through that problem specifically. I'm going to push it out on Teams. Okay. I'll do that today when I get back to my office this afternoon. Because if y'all have a question, I probably need to push it to my own mind as well. But here you go. It's easier than you think. Yeah, it's probably. What's up, Abby? Because you got up early to be here on time. So proud of you.
I got a question about this.
Okay, let me grab my mask.
I mean, it doesn't help if I'm too tired to be able to pay attention.
Well, you know what? You gotta get to bed earlier.
So.
Okay, hold on. You lost that plus or minus. Where's your plus or minus? There should be a plus or minus between that 7 and 6. So that changes it from plus.
Okay.
Hold on, wait. All right, before we go there, because this is gonna change your numbers. This is the plus or minus. So that should be it.
Well, and that's what I was doing here.
This should be your plus or minus, right?
Right.
This should be your plus or minus. Okay, we don't want to change the operator.
And I hadn't done that. I done it here.
Okay.
Plus is 80, minus is 66. My work does
But
not work.
this, can't do it inside that wrap. Right, 'cause that's a whole number. And that's a number inside the back. So see, mine came out, square root of 1 is 1 times 1 is 1. But see, you don't have that for 73.
Okay, okay,
Yours
that's
has
where I
to
was,
stay in.
okay.
So,
That's
yeah,
no problem.
yeah, that's where your answer would be 7 plus square root of 73 divided by 8, comma, 7 minus 73. And you could push that in your calculator, but I think it says to leave an exact answer. So you're looking to see, or can you do 5-4 there and do the factor tree, see if that will reduce? This is where I'm showing you that. So that's as far as you can go without getting this. So if you wanted a decimal,
you would just punch this in your calculator and this in your calculator, and that would give you the decimal equivalent. But my lab's gonna work as.
Okay, so I was, if I done it right, that is the correct answer.
Yes, that's as far as you get. Now, if you had 75, you would have to do that factor tree.
Yeah.
3, 5 times 5. You would have 3 plus or minus 5 on the square root of 5 times 3 divided by 5. And then you put that up 3 cents plus or minus the square root of 3 because they would cancel much separate. And then you just split it into plus and minus.
Okay,
There's a lot of little things to it. That's why it gets someday.
that's fine. I appreciate it.
No problem. I know you like to repeat it.
Well, I just don't want to be behind. This is all brand new to me. I had general math 1 back in 90.
Okay. It's more exciting if it's new. It's, you know, because it just depends on how, you can tell Adam remembers it from high school. He answers very quickly.
I don't know
Yeah.
why I need it now, but
This is gymnastics for your brain. We're making new wrinkles.
yeah.
Brain wrinkles are a good thing.
Right, my very first paper for industrial maintenance. I've been in the industry.
How y'all doing? I'm good. It would have been nice to sleep in today, but oh, I could so sleep in. I could so sleep in. When my alarm went off this morning, I was like, oh no, I'm so not ready for this. We are a little ahead.
I've been so busy with work that I need to.
Morning, Matt family.
How are you doing, Brian?
I'm always blessed.
Always playing.
Can't be more away.
You didn't have any trouble getting up this morning in the rain. We needed the rain though. I was like, oh my goodness.
It's so dry.
I was so glad to see it come. I was so glad.
But it's cooler in the morning.
The dogs weren't excited when they had to go out this morning, but I wasn't excited when they came in and jumped on the sofa, but.
Shaking off. Shaking off.
But
They call you mama, the dog.
They think I
They
am.
do. First thing
the chat.
Well, no, the kids are just like, they're supposed to be our dogs. And I was like, they know who takes care of them. Step it up.
Corbin, forgot about the video. I forgot about the video. I'm making the video today and I'm pushing it out on tape. Because somebody else just asked me about the same problem and I was like, oh, Corbin. And I remembered yesterday, Mondays and Wednesdays, I have the most classes on Monday and Wednesday. So those are my busiest days. So it's hard for me to get things done. But Tuesdays and Thursdays are the days I can accomplish something because I start early and I finish early.
Clean it thoroughly. If I did not, no, I did not clean today. I went to the bathroom and got. Might want to grab a spray.
Personal tips.
He did have a drink, so that could have been condensation. That's what we're gonna hope for.
No. Once you get one, it's 5 parts. Yeah. Goes Saturday night. I come plus 1 to 5. You on them data? This is yeah, I just like to lie. Our starting page. And then you got the writing style. We have a full from our, when the writer responds, it's still called. Probably some kind of for social. Yeah. I'm mostly the reference. I'm talking about machine, I'm talking about primary. Maybe technology. Mostly the Ready? Ready? You gotta. Oh, yeah. You like, it has a slow hours like to the responsive to me. Oh, I just like for two. No. And it's more pop.
Like, why 9:30?
Yeah.
So we're missing.
That's why I'm scared. But. Until we get those and we shut off. Like that. It's definitely December 7th. What's that?
Yeah, I know it's sort of.
I'm doing. It's Saturday. I gotta go. I will go. This is something.
Yeah.
All right, guys, let's go ahead and get rolling. So this is our last section. We're not going to finish it today because it's a really big one. But we're going to do what we're going to do today. Then we'll say see you later and we'll finish it up on Tuesday. Okay. All right. So we are going to quadratics today. So 6-1, we were just kind of combining like terms. We were figuring out what terms were, what variables were, all that jazz. Just reviewing that. And 6-2, we solved equations using SATMAT. And 6-3, we solved word problem equations using SATMAT. In 6-4, we solved inequalities using SATMAT. So we've been using SATMAT. Oh, so today we're going to shift gears a little bit because now we're going to x squared. And when you see x squared instead of x, then you're solving it using different methods. So we don't use SATMAT for that. So I will give you this. I will keep your solving inequalities and equations of the first degree, just x, using SATMAT, separate from your solving quadratics, which is x squared, on your test. So hopefully if they were mixed up, you won't have a problem by the time we get there. But I'm gonna try to make it easier on your brain just by keeping them separate, because it's two very different methods. So this is what I want you to know first of all. All right, so let's just say 6.2 through 6.4, equations and inequalities. You had stuff that was just x to the first power, and at most you had one answer. And we used SADMAP to solve it. So today in 6-5 and next week in 6-5, you're going to have stuff that looks more like this. And so you've got x to the second power. So if you've got x to the first power, you get one answer. Guess how many answers you get if you have x to the second power? 2 answers, okay? Guess how many answers you get if you have x to the third power? Yeah, and so on, and so on. Okay, so this is not going to use SADMAP. Okay, so not SADMAP. Not when you've got an x squared. Not going to be SADMAP when you've got an x squared. All right, so we're going to go through the methods to solve it today. There's about 4 different methods to solve it. We're going to do one today and one next week, and we're only going to do those 2. Okay, I'm going to tell you what the other 2 are though. But one, you need a graphing calculator, which is not required in this class. Do any of you have graphing calculators? I'm going to show you how to do it, just so you know how to do it. If you've got it, because you want to know how to use it, right? It costs a lot, but it's not required for this class, so you don't need it. Just if you have it, I'll show you. But take a look at this. All we're doing to start with is we are just going to multiply. So this is a binomial times a binomial. That means by 2 terms. 2 terms times 2 terms. Trinomial, 3 terms. All right, so when we multiply, you can do it 2 ways. You can do distributive property or you can do full. It doesn't matter. You get the same answer. It's 2 different thought processes for exactly the same thing. So it's just whatever your brain chooses to do. I don't care. All right, if you're doing the distributive property thought process, basically all you're doing is you're saying A times A times 3, and then you switch over here and say positive 2 times A, positive 2 times 3. And then if there's any like terms, you combine them. So let me just remind you of this. What's the difference between x plus x and x times x? Multiplying changes the exponent, adding the coefficient. It's easy to get that confused. All right, so that's going to be a squared plus 3i. Is ice cream made here? Okay. I don't know if I've got cash. Wait. All right. All right. All right, so we come up with a quadratic trinomial. Quadratic just means the highest exponent is a 2, and trinomial 1, 2, 3 terms. Quadratic because squared. Trinomial, I just don't want to throw these terms around, because 3 terms if you're not familiar. Okay, so this is just distributive property method. That's what we're practicing first, is just the distribute method. All righty. And you can do it in your head. You can do it on paper. You know what you're comfortable with. You know if you're getting the right answers or not. So you make those decisions. But if we're using that method, first we're going to distribute the X, then the positive 5. So that's going to be X times 2X, X times negative 7, and then the same thing with a 5. 5 times 2X, 5 times negative 7. All right, and then we've got like terms in the middle, so I'm just going to go ahead and combine those using my integer rules, and I get a quadratic trinomial. All right, so what if, go ahead and finish that. I'll put my what if over here. Could I do this problem using the distributive property method? Even though it's got 2 terms and 3 terms? You could. If you had 10 terms and 10 terms, you would still be able to do distributive property. So see, our other method is FOIL, and FOIL only works if you've got 2 terms and 2 terms. So you're boxed in. You can't do something like this if you're doing FOIL method, but you can do the distributive property method, and that's why it's important. So let me just show you. If you're doing distributive property method, first we're going to take that and push it through the second set of parentheses. So you're going to have what? 2x cubed minus x squared minus 1x. Sorry. Then we're going to take that 3x squared. Hold on, I'll catch up with you in a minute. All right, go ahead. Now, so plus 6x to the 4th minus cubed. So then you just look, is there anything I can combine? Well, 2x cubed and negative 3x cubed would be negative x cubed. And then you have negative x squared minus 3x squared, so minus 4x squared. And then you have a 6x to the 4th. I missed that one. And then minus 6. So you can multiply anything using that distributive method. Anything. All right. So go ahead and do this one using that distributive property method, and just make sure that you're fine on that thought process before we add to it. All right, so I'm gonna come behind you. So 5n. So 15n squared minus 20n negative 27n plus 36. Make sure you watch your integer signs, right? And then those are like terms. And there you go. You good? Okay. If you're not good, you see a mistake. Either one is good. All right. So if you don't want to, if you just have two terms and two terms, you can also use the full method. And it is exactly the same thing as distributive property. It's just a different way of thinking about it. So when your My Lab homework says use the full method, if you use distributive property method, you'll never know because it's the same thing. It was the same thing. Okay, it's just a different thought process. So it's just multiply the first terms, the outside terms, the inside terms, and the last terms. It just tells you the order to multiply everything so you don't miss anything. All right, so this is what you need to know. This is the first term, the first of each parentheses. This is the last term, the last in each parenthesis. So that kind of makes sense. First, last, first, last. So outside, inside. I'll just put plus. It could be plus or minus. All right, so first, last, outside, inside. So let's do this one. Here's first. X times X. Outside, take the sign with it. Negative 5 times X. Inside, 2X. And last. Negative 2. So first, outside, inside, last. All right, let me label them. First, X squared. Outside, negative 5X. Inside, positive 2X. And last, negative 10. Color coded for your visual enjoyment. All right. It's fine. It is totally fine. Whatever floats your boat. See, this is how I learned it, period, when I was in middle school. And so this is what my brain does just automatically when I see it. It's just the order it goes in. But when you end up with something like this, sorry, I'll put it back in a minute. When you end up with something like this, first, outer, inner, last isn't going to cut it because there's too many terms here for it to work. And so really, in my opinion, now distributive property is better because it works for everything, no matter how big it gets. But I have to make sure you know what full is. One day your kid's going to be doing full and you have to know how to do it.
I never heard of it.
Yeah, first outside, inside, last.
Say it again.
First inside, first outside, inside, last.
Yes. That's it. Just the order you multiply. Yeah.
But usually yeah, just do that. Yeah, that's how.
See, it just happens in your brain. And it's just a way to try to make it happen where you don't have to have quite so much work. It doesn't matter how you choose. All right, so let's knock number 2 out if you haven't already. What are the first terms? What do you get when you multiply the first terms? Beautiful. So let's switch to outside, which are these two. 27A, inside, 32A, and last, 36. It's really not bad. It's just I showed you distributive property first. And there you go. All right. So that's just multiplying. You use either method and do these two before we add on. Make sure we're solid before you move on. Okay, what did you get for that first one? Who wants to share? Final answer. Go ahead.
4A squared plus 29A.
Can I get a second? All right. Okay, so first outer. Oh, 31. Oops, that's okay. I'll fix that in a second. That's all right. We'll fix it. Everybody else was like, how do I got 31? Anyway, so there we go. All right, guys, what happens on number 2 when you have opposite sides? What happens with your outer and inner? They cancel out. So really, if you recognized it, you could just skip outer and inner. But it's not like it doesn't take just a matter of seconds to do it. So x squared, outer, inner, last. And they cancel out. All right, so y'all feel pretty good about that? All right, so now we're ready to go backwards. Okay, yeah. All right, so our goal today is to solve quadratics, right? That's our goal. And so that was just getting us there. You will have homework problems on that, but that's our goal. So we're gonna have two types. Let me just write this down here. So you're gonna have 2 types. You're gonna have one type where it's like x squared plus 5x plus 6. And you're gonna have one type where it's like 3x minus 5x plus, I don't know, say 9. I'm just making stuff up right now. So this is the difference. All right, we're gonna do both of these today, and then that's all we're gonna do today. We're not gonna hit the quadratic formula or anything today. We're not gonna do the calculator punching in today. All right, just gonna do these 2. So this is x squared where the coefficient would just be a 1, right? And we're gonna use product sum shortcut. So I'm just gonna put shortcut. Okay. This one has a number in front of the x squared that is not 1. That is going to be the shortcut with divide and slide. I'm going to write it. I'll write it. Now there's lots of different ways to do this. I'm going to show you the easiest way to do this. If you've got another way to do it and it's working, I don't need you to fix it, but I'm going to show you a method that is very easy for doing this. So we're doing 2 things. We're going to factor and we're going to solve. One leads to the other. All right, you ready? All right, so this is standard form. Standard form just has your exponents descending as you go down. Look, 2, 1, none. 2, 1, none. That's just standard form. Standard form is just the easiest way to factor. It's easiest way to put it in the quadratic formula when we do that next week. All right, so let me remind you the product sum shortcut, or teach you if you haven't done it before. Always have a mix. So here we go. All right, notice that all of these do not have a leading coefficient. So this is not the shortcut with divide and slide. It's just the shortcut. Okay. All right. So it's called the product sum shortcut because there's a quick way to do it. All right. So we're going to start with the constant is going to be the product number 100% of the time. And we call the middle term the sum, but it really could be sum or difference. It's add or subtract. All right, so this one is really short because we're going to start with 3. What numbers multiply together to give me 3? The list is short. Yeah, it's what you think. Y'all are like, what? Nothing. But 1 and 3 counts, right? All right, 1 and 3. So there's nothing else. That's it. Can I add or subtract 1 and 3 to get a 4? Yes. I could add it to get a 4, subtract it to get a 2, but I want a 4, positive 4. What do the signs need to be for me to get a positive 4? Both positive. You see that? So this is how you check it. And most people check it in their head, but I'm going to write it down so you see what's going through my head. 1 times 3 is 3. 1 plus 3 is 4. Multiply to get this, add or subtract to get this. It checked, right? So I'm ready for my answer now. So I'm going to put my parentheses. That's an x squared, so I'm going to split it. I put the positive 1 in one parenthesis and the positive 3 in the other. It doesn't matter which parenthesis gets the 1 and which one gets the 3. And that is factored. All there is to it. Now, how do you know you did it correctly? Full. X times x, x squared. Outer is 3x, inner is 1x, which gives you 4x. And then 1 times 3 is 3. I mean, you don't have to check it, but you can check it. So this is factored. And that's all there is to it. Let's go ahead and add solve in there. And we're just going to do solved in a separate step, but on the same problem. Now, if they ask you to factor it, that's your answer. If they ask you to solve it, you would go one step further. And you can do it in your head. The solved answer is -1 and -3. What did I do to the signs? Just changed them. This is why. This is technically what's happening. But you can do it in your head. That's if they ask you to solve. Factored, leave it in parentheses. Solve, take it on down and find the answer. Make sure that you read the directions so that you don't solve everything, because that's what people do. They solve everything. And sometimes they don't need you to solve. They just say factor, and then you would stop. All right, let's do it. So technically you don't have to make a list, but I just want to show you 12 and 1, 6 and 2, 3 and 4. Are y'all ready for the second one? Okay, so I could get an 11 or a 13, 8 or a 4, 7 or a 1. I want 7. All right, so that's the one I want. What kind of 7 do I want? So that means, so now we check it to make sure we're good. So -3 times -4 equals what kind of 12? Positive 12, that's what we want. And -3 plus -4 equals And that's what we want. So we're ready for our answer. So split the M. -3 in one, -4 in the other. All right, what if it asks us to solve? What will the answers be? 3 and 4. Change the signs. Technically, this is what's happening. But you can do it in your head. So just change the signs. Yeah. Technically, real math is occurring, but you know, technically. All right, so let's do it again. All right, so product sum. Now this one, I don't think we need to make a long list for because the number's 35, but what are we trying to get? 36. So what are your factors that'll give you 36? Yeah, so that one pops out, you know, pretty quickly. So I could get a 34 or a 36 from that. All right, both positive, you're right. I heard somebody say, ooh, just kidding. All righty, so 35 times 1, 35, 35 plus 1, 36. So let's factor it. What are my factors? All right, doesn't matter which one goes first. All right, that's factored. What is solved? Good. All right, you want to try that last one before we add to it? I mean, if you can get it now, great. If you're not quite ready, that's okay too. Do what you can as much as you can. Sometimes you will need to pull out your calculator to find factors. Occasionally, my lab is unkind with the numbers. I don't appreciate it, but I can't fix it because they're randomly generated. And you have to pull out your calculator to find factors. Or you can Google it. I can make sure on your test they don't come out to be because I have more control over that. If you get stuck, you Google what are the factors of. It works. I've cheated before. It's okay on homework. So look, and just in case somebody's stuck, what are the factors of 42 that'll add or subtract to give you 13? 6 and 7. All right, so just in case somebody was stuck. All right, so this time we want a -13. So that means both of them have to have the negative sign, right? So -6 times -7, +42, -6 plus -7, -13. So once we know it's going to work, we split the A, -6, -7, that is factored. What is it solved? I mean, technically, you're saying A-6 equals 0 and A-7 equals 0. So you would move it to the other side. But because all it's doing is changing the sign. Now, we will end up with some fractions in a minute, and that's a little bit different, but it's still pretty easy to do in your head. I'll show you. So far, so good. All right, let me point something out to you if I can, because that looks messy. Hold on. I'll highlight. This is not something you have to know or anything, but it is kind of helpful. Take a look. Every one of these had a plus. Their constant on the end was positive. When the constant on the end was positive, they ended up having the same sign. That's not a coincidence, because a positive times a positive is a positive, a negative times a negative is a positive. So the only time that they're going to have opposite signs is if there's a negative on the end. Guess what we're going to do now? Okay. Let's do 3 of them with negatives. It's not something you have to memorize. It's just helpful to some people to notice it. All right. So this is where King of the Hill comes in. This means we're going to end up having to subtract. And if you're subtracting, remember your final answer has the sign of the bigger number. This is where King of the Hill comes in. All right, so what are factors of 12? Right, so we have, let me do this one more time. I won't do it every time. Yeah, I can get a 13 or 11, a 4 and 8, a 1 or a 7. Now, if your brain goes to the one that works, that's fantastic. Now, 6 and 2 can give me 8 or 4. I have to use my signs to make it give me a positive 4. So what signs does each number need for it to be a positive 4? Perfect. So 6 times -2 is -12. 6 plus -2, 4. Check and check. I'm ready for my answer. So my factored answer would be what? Beautiful. My solved answer would be our graphing is going to be chapter 7. And it's easy. Quadratic formula, it's not hard, but it's tedious. I don't like it either. It is not my favorite way. I would factor all day long, but you can't solve everything by factoring. And so you have to have other ways, but there are other ways. You can do completing the square or finding zeros on your calculator. So if you've got graphing calculators, I will show you how to do it. Not that it, just so you know how to do it on your calculators. But you still have to be able to do the quadratic formula. But I agree, it's a little tedious for my taste as well. All right, now this next one is tricky. So let's put a little asterisk by it. It's the same process. So the process isn't different. It's just a little bit tricky. And the reason is there's 2 sets of factors in 24 that will give you a 10. And so it all comes down to signs. But your brain may just pick a factor and try to make it work. That's what happens sometimes. So what are the 2 sets of factors of 24 that will give you a 10? 12 and 2, 6 and 4. You can get a 10 out of both of those. So it comes down to signs. If I want a positive 10, what are my signs on 12 and 2? Positive 12, -2. If I want a positive 10 on 6 and 4, what are my signs? This is where the difference comes in. That gives me positive 10. That gives me positive 10. So yes, we want -24. So which one of these gives us -24 when we multiply it? That's how you discern which one it is. So -24, +24. This throws out 6 and 4. So you do need to check those signs. So M plus 12, M minus 2, factored. And now let's solve. So what are my solutions? And my lab will say, put the answers in the blank. If it wants you to solve, it'll say, put the answers in the blank separated by comma. Because there's 2 answers because it's x squared. But if it just wants you to factor, it just wants it in parentheses. Please read the instructions so you're not cussing. Okay, it's frustrating when you do the work and you put in the solutions when it wanted you to stop at factoring and you're like, oh, yeah. All right, do that last one. Do number 3 and to see how you're feeling about that.
This chapter is overall easier than the last chapter.
It is. It's because, well, I mean, and y'all really are not being heavily dependent on your calculator. It's just, but FYI, when we get ready to do quadratic formula, which is not hard but tedious, that whole simplifying this radical comes back from 5-4.
I learned quadratic formula in calculus.
Well, I mean, you use it in every single course. It pops up in it, maybe not statistics,
No, step no, because my.
but every other single course, it's coming. But, and it's really because it goes with parabolas, and parabolas are the most common graph for representing real life scenarios, you know, because what comes up must come down. It's a parabola. That's a quadratic. And so it just falls into so many actual applications. It's got to just kind of come. All right. So what are factors of 32 that will give you 14? -16, +2, excellent, because that's -16 times 2 gives me -32, -16 plus 2, -14. So there's your thought process. I should write it down. Once you know it's right, straight to factor. It's factored. And then to solved. All right. So now I've got them mixed up. So now I want you to do these 4 and I will walk around and see who's got it and see who's struggling. And if you're struggling, I'll help you. But before we get started, what number is this? That's a -1, right? That throws some people, and I know you know that's a -1. So if you need to put a -1 there, put a -1 there. And I'll do it too. So go ahead and do it factored, label it with an F, do it solved, label it with an S, and I will give you a minute to work, and then I'll come around, and if you're stuck, I will help you. I certainly will. Who said that? Philip? I'm like, with a mask on, I can't see mouse moving. Yeah, if I'm listening well. Okay. Perfect. It's so easy, isn't it?
You're just anxious for some slide in my. Okay, you're working way too hard on it. All it says is it's on. And it's on. All you have to do is the same thing you did from here. Good job. So now you're just looking at signs, right? You're so smart. Let's go. Oh, well, you were working forward and it was, had done most of it. for you. The only reason those are in your notes is because people would do that on their homework. And so I'm like, how about that's not in the bank, so people would know they don't have to reinvent the wheel later. Oh, already done it. Here, okay, close, but when you get this, and these are the factors that would give you this, right? So that's what this is. So that's part of your factor. So that's your factory. So if it just is factory, that's where it goes. If it says it's gonna solve it, then you go. to the operation. So factors go in the parentheses. Because it's gonna ask you to do both, so we might as well practice both. You already know it? You good?
Yep.
Okay, you still need more factors, yeah, because. This is right. What? So. So see, you're checking, you're saying that you're 60%. And once that, like these numbers, then you just put in the one six, X minus 6. Okay. I don't worry, I'm good. You're good. Yep, you got it. So because otherwise, it's going around. That's okay. It's early yet. So, and this one. But the first two look, no, but this one's good. This one. Maybe. So which one was that? Okay. These are. We are almost there. That's why, that shortcut's fine. Our business name.
Yeah, it's
Factory.
basically shortcut.
Shortcut is fine. All right, let me. Okay. All right, let me walk through it with you. Most of you are there are very close. So that's looking good. Okay. This will give you a positive. So those signs will be switched. Everything else. Okay. Did you see that delayed seeing? Okay, it registered late. All right, guys, let's go through it. Make sure you got them right. All right, so it's not necessarily the first factors that pop into your head. Sometimes yes, sometimes no, but you have to make sure that the factors that you get will combine to give you that middle number. So in this case, it's 6 and 2. Once you find the pair that will work, then you worry about the signs. So since I want a -8, that means I have to add them. So they both have to have the same sign. So now we check it. -6 times -2. And you don't have to write this on your paper. You can do this in your head. I'm writing it so you can see my thought process. +12, -6 plus -2. Once you know that works, you're ready for the parentheses. So t minus 6, t minus 2, that is if they ask for it to be factored. If they want it solved, depends on the directions, you take it one step further and go opposite operations. And again, this is what's happening. You're solving it, but it just changes the signs. So solved, factored. Your directions will tell you which one it wants. Make sure you read them so you do not have to get frustrated. Okay. All right, let's do that next one. So -12, what are the factors that give me 4 and 3? I was gonna say, y'all have done it, go with me. Now, what kind of one do I want? Negative, so king of the hill needs to be negative. So let's check it. -4 times 3, -12. -4 plus 3, -1. So that's m minus 4, m plus 3. There's my factored answer. What if they want it solved? What does m equal? Okay. All right, next one. Let me switch color so it doesn't all blend. Factors of 15 that will give me a 2, 3, and 5. Once you figure out the numbers, you've got to figure out the signs. So I've got to subtract to get a 2. So that means opposite signs. King of the hill needs to be positive. So bigger number, positive. So let's check it. -3 times 5, -15. -3 plus 5, 2. Once it checks out, we go to our parentheses. There's your factored answer.
It's almost fun. Maybe not Friday night fun, but you know, math fun. Well, thank you. I appreciate that. All right, so now let's solve it. What can Z be? And -5. So there's our solution and there's our factors. Yes, that's not what I thought you were gonna ask me. I thought you were gonna ask me, does it matter which one of these come first? It does matter which number is positive or negative, because like +5 and -3, that gives me a +2. But if I switch that and do +3 and -5, it gives me a -2. So yeah, check it in your calculator, check it in your brain, check it wherever, but make sure you're gonna get the right number when you subtract it being positive or negative. All right, so factors of 18. 6 and 3 are the ones that do it. I want a -9. So what do my signs have to be? So let's check it. -6 times -3, -6 plus -3, -9. There's factor. What is solved? You got it. How do y'all feel about that? Because I don't want to add to it before you feel good about it. I just have one more thing to add, but it's enough to get you confused if you're already confused. All right. So on this next part, I only put this in here because it was confusing people on the homework. It's not extra work, it's less work. So when they give you something like this, they've already done the factoring for you and you just have to do the solve part. Okay, already done the factoring. The directions will definitely say solve. So you're just going to solve. You can do it on paper or you can do it in your head. But notice there's some fractions coming. There's still a trick to it. Okay, so before I do it on paper, what are the solutions? 7 and -2. How about this one? -5 and +1/2. What is this one? Look for the pattern. Some people have it. +7/3, -5/2. What's Brian doing? All right, what's this one? +1, -3. All right, so remember, technically I said what's happening is this. You worked so hard on those. Okay. Yeah, he really did, y'all. He has so much work on his paper. He put it together and made this quadratic. So that's technically what's happening, but that makes it opposite and opposite. All right, so over here, when there's a fraction, same thing, but there's just a little bit more work. So -5, -5. But over here, it's 2 steps. So it's +1, which is 2x = 1. And now divide by 2. So x = 1/2. So that's the long way. That's the actual math. I'm just teaching you the lazy way, which I'm okay with either. But take a look. This was opposite sign. This is opposite sign 1 divided by 2. You can go the math way or the lazy way, as long as you're getting it right. So when you're solving these, if you want to do the shortcut, you go this over this. Change the sign. So +7/3. Change the sign, -5/2. but you don't have to do it the lazy way. You can say 3x equals, move that 7 over and divide both sides. You can say move that 5 over and x equals -5/2. Lazy way, math way. So those are just solutions. They just factored them for you. They won't do but a couple, 1 or 2 like that, so don't get excited. Most of them you'll have to factor and solve yourself. Factor or factor and solve. Please read the directions. All right. So we're gonna, how we feel about this? Pretty good? Okay, so we're gonna skip this right now and use it for our review on Tuesday because we've already practiced it a good bit, the factoring and the solving. The only thing that I want to say about this is this one's not ready to be factored. What do I have to do first? I have to move it first. So that's the only thing that I want to say before you start doing anything on one like this. Make sure it's in standard form, but don't do those today. I know you can at this point. Save it for when you forget stuff over the weekend. Okay, so let me go ahead and add the last thing in there. And the very last thing is the shortcut with divide and slide. So let me go back real quick. Sorry, I don't mean to make you dizzy. This. So we just practiced this shortcut. So now I want to throw a number in front of the x squared, which makes it shortcut with a divide and slide. Okay. Again, lots of different ways to do this. This is what I think is the easiest way. That's what I think you'll like the best. It is not the way I learned it when I was in middle school, but it's the way I should have learned it. I don't know. All right, so let's go down to, here we go, right here. All right, so we're going to do 3 of these. I'm going to work through one. I'm going to work through the second one, and then I'm going to let you have a go at it. And then we'll pick it back up and do it more on Tuesday and then add in the quadratic formula. And that'll finish 6-5. All right, so you ready? So this is when you've got a leading coefficient. So what you do first of all is you try to turn it into the shortcut. So you say 3 times -15, which is -45, and you rewrite your equation. So your next step is going to be x squared minus 4x instead of -15 minus 45 where you multiplied. So you're turning it into the shortcut. That's what you're kind of doing. I'm going to kind of go slow. This is a pretty quick process, but we're going to go kind of slow right now so you don't miss it. Don't miss it, Troy. All right. So you good with this? All right, now we're going to do the shortcut. So we're doing the shortcut. What are factors of 45 that add or subtract to give me -4 or 4? 9 and 5. That'll give me a 4, right? So now we need to focus on signs. What signs do they need to have to get me a -4? All right, king of the hill is negative. You got it. They need to be opposites. So -9, +5. That's going to give me a -4. This is just what we've been practicing. Okay. All right. So now let's check it. -9 times 5, -45. -9 plus 5, -4. I'm ready to go for my parentheses. All right, but that's not the answer because we got to go for the divide and slide now. But we're close. So we turned it into shortcut, did the shortcut method, then we're going to hit divide and slide to get our answer. Okay, so here's the new part. All right, you ready? All right, now, notice that if I multiply these back together, I would not get to this. So that lets you know it's not finished. So what you're gonna do for this next step is you're gonna go back and get whatever your leading coefficient was, and you're gonna bring it down here and divide your constants by it. So fourth, divide or reduce, put reduce in there as well. All right, so this is what's gonna happen. Divided by 3, divided by 3. So if you can divide, you divide. If you can reduce, you reduce. So take a look at this one. What's 9 divided by 3? So we're just gonna put x minus 3 in this one because it divides out nice and evenly. Maybe it does, maybe it doesn't. We don't care if it doesn't divide. So I'll look at 5/3. It doesn't divide evenly. Does it reduce? It does nothing. So this is where I have to slide. So when you slide it, it slides right in front of its own x. So if this one still had a denominator, I would slide it in front of its own x. So 3x plus 5. It is factored. You're done. Let me show you after you write that down, because I see you're writing. This gets easier about the 3rd time if you don't have it. All right, you ready? First, 3x squared. Outer is 5x. Inner is negative 9x. 5x and negative 9x. And last, negative. It's the easiest way I've ever seen. All right, so that is your factored answer. What if you're supposed to solve? What is x equal to? Perfect. Ready to do it again? We got 3. We'll do 3 of these. Then we'll pick back up with it again and review it on Tuesday. Oh. There's a message from Jacob. I was wondering where you are. Are you ready? Are you wanting to do it ahead of me and give it a try, or is it too soon? I was thinking it was too soon, but it may not be. We can go slowly. Do you remember what step 1 is? Yes, 9 times negative 5, and rewrite it. It doesn't come out to be 45 every time. I just picked numbers where that did, but that's just a coincidence. Just a coincidence. Okay, I didn't do that on purpose. All right, now you factor it using the shortcut method. All right, so what did it factor into using the shortcut method? Okay, 15 and 3. All right, and then signs.
9, 4, 5.
So 9 and 5 would give us 14 or 4. Yeah. Okay, so So -15 times 3, -45, -15 plus 3, -12. So that's the one that was solid. But you gotta check it to see. So there's the end of the shortcut. So the only new part is divide and slide. So you gotta be close to the end. So what do we divide by on this one? 9. It's whatever your leading coefficient was at the very beginning of the problem. So we're gonna bring it down, and it goes only under your constants, never under your variables. Divided by 9, divided by 9. Okay. All right, now none of those divide out nicely, right? But will they reduce? They will reduce. So you have to reduce. If you don't reduce, it'll kind of go south. All right, so what goes into both 15 and 9? 3. So 5/3 and still 3. That's okay. It's reduced. So what's the only thing we haven't done? Slide. So there was the divide. And now here comes the slide. If you still have denominators, the denominators are the things that you slide. And they slide in front of their very own x's. It doesn't matter that they're the same. They could be the same. They could be different. We really do not care. Means nothing to us. They do not. Because we're not adding them. All right. So that is factored. So if you're bored Friday, loads of fun. All right, now let's go ahead and solve it. So if you're solving it, you can really back up to step. What are my solutions? Thirds. That's a 5, y'all. It looks freakish. Let me try that again. Okay. All right. So there's your solve. And there, if it says just factor. Again, read your directions to save yourself trouble so you know where to stop. What do you think? All right, try it on your own. Where should be is wrong. Stop at factor. Just stop at factor. Don't worry about solving it. Fine if you want to work with a person beside you or in front of you or behind you, if you want to check your answer before we go over. right, so let me say this while you're finishing up. We are to that point in the semester where things are I mean, I've got a lot of classes, but all those initial startup crazy questions that people ask and stuff have gone away, and it's usually my online people, not y'all. But because they don't want to read anything, they want to sign up for online and read nothing. We've talked about that. If you're working through homework problems, if you're working through quiz me's, don't spend a ton of time if you get stuck on something. Send it to me. Use Ask My Instructor and ask me a question. Don't just send it to me without a question, because then I don't know where you're stuck. If you're working on something, it's not coming out right, and you need to know where you're going wrong, take a picture with your phone and shoot it to me on Teams. Give me a point of reference so I can look and say, this is where it's going wrong, or something like that. Because stuff like this, you could be doing the tiniest thing wrong, and I could probably point you in the direction that you need to go fairly quickly if you let me know. Don't just get frustrated or give up, because we're at a time where my email is not overwhelming right now. So I'm ready. I'm ready to, answer questions or get you back on the right track. Don't get frustrated and give up. All right, let's walk through this one. So first step, rewrite it like it was shortcut. So I'm taking that 3, multiplying it by the 5, and changing that to a 15. So what are factors of 15 that add or subtract to give me a 2? 5 and 3. So what signs do they need to have for me to get a -2? All right, so that's -15 if you multiply, and -2 if you add or subtract. So we're golden. Now we've got to do the divide and slide. So divided by 3, divided by 3. At this point, you divide if you can, you reduce if you can. This little trick doesn't work if you forget to divide or reduce. But as long as you divide or reduce, you're golden. All right, now this doesn't divide or reduce. So what do I have to do? Slide, now slide. Okay, I need background music, don't I? Okay. All right, and what's 3 divided by 3? 1. So it does divide out, so we don't need to do any sliding on that one. And that is your factored answer. All right. We'll do it again on Tuesday, just in case you've hopefully not forgotten everything, but I know that's not due yet. So you're only going to hit it if you're working ahead. So we'll see y'all. Y'all have a great weekend. Make sure you're caught up on those quiz me's, and yeah. See ya. You too. This is just never a good day to miss. Just because mostly of the factoring. What's that? Let's look, because I checked the other day, but then I emailed you. That's been a while. I did. All right, let me end this meeting. Cole and I